All right. So time affluence part 2 is this. I want to deepen and just develop this idea a little bit more. And I talked about, having 1,000 minutes a day, working too much, working too little, being productive. But the deeper part of this that I want to propose in this work around mortality is we don't really know how long we're going to live. Most people don't. And Stephen Levine wrote a book called A Year to Live. Great book if you hadn't read it. If you have not read it, check it out. He poses a lot of amazing stuff. He's worked with a lot of people dying, cancer patients and stuff like that. And he weaves in a ton of Buddhist ideas, a ton of indigenous American ideas. And the thing that I want to synthesize and to try to transfer over in these ideas is, if you only had a year to live, how would you live? Would you be working 70 hours a week? No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't. You're doing that to plan for later. So the paradox is, if you knew you were going to die in a year, you'd live different, but you're not going to die in a year. You're going to die in your 100. And I've talked about this before. So the wrinkle that I'm going to introduce to you is, how do we harmonize fun and work? How do we harmonize these different aspects of ourselves and spending time with the people we love in this kind of unconscious belief, thinking that we have more time than we do? I have conversations with clients and with people, and I say, hey, here's the reality. On my mom's side, some of the men, they die young. They died in their 50s or in their 60s. Some of them have lived longer. And then on my dad's side, dad, 72, grandfather, 72, died at those ages. So for me, that I don't have to believe that would be, but if I don't want to be surprised if I'm late 60s, early 70s, and stuff starts breaking down, which means I've got a finite amount of time. So I want to plan to be able to live to be 100, but I don't want to have and save a bunch of stuff that I'm planning to do after I work hard and after I do these different things. I want there to be a balance. I want there to be a certain allocation of energy for multiple things. One of the things that I see here is that people kind of work really, really hard and try to stay strict, and what happens is they're so strict and they're so contained that they blow out. And I think that they fuck off and they blow out because there's a part of them that they have convinced themselves is not them. They outsource that for fun and pleasure. It's like an outside entity, but it's actually them. And so the thing that would be important is to integrate that part, integrate the fun and the pleasurable things with being useful and contributing to the world. So the thing that happens is you or we act like we've been tricked by this outside source that disrupts us. But it's actually you, and it's actually a lower level consciousness part of you that you're actually trying to exile. You're trying to act like it isn't a part of you. And so if you're wanting to up your game, which I am, and I hope you are too, if you want to up your game, you've got to find that part of you that you're acting isn't you, and you've got to raise the consciousness of that part. You've got to take the duties that it is handling, and you've got to either take that away or help that part of you develop into this next higher version of itself, and then integrate it, and then create a greater cooperation and harmony with fun and pleasure, along with career, productivity, and love, and etc. So here's the opportunity. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to read this book by Stephen Levine, A Year to Live. But the deeper opportunity, or the quicker, easier opportunity in this moment is, what would you do different with the people you love right now, here today, if you were gonna die in a year, or if you were gonna die in 10 years? And I want you just to begin to borrow into this idea that the deal is this. I believe your life would be different if you had this. A year, 10 years. It starts to get real for us. Anything out there 40, 50 years, it's not real. So what would you do if you're going to die? What would you do different? And what would you do different if you knew you were going to live to be 100? And do them both. Start to put those things in motion and do them both. And figure out the unhealthy part of you've got in charge of productivity, the one that's possibly your ego, or the one that's telling you a bunch of lies about how much you have to have or accomplish or do, that has you working more than 50 hours a week, and help that entity in you raise in consciousness. And the same thing with this part of you that you blame is blowing you out, but it's you, and that you're acting like isn't you, and that probably even that part and the part that's unhealthy in terms of driving productivity is the one that's causing you to push that one out of your life and act like it isn't you and it doesn't exist. And how do you take that part of you and help it and you to raise your consciousness in that level? Because there are multiple facets and parts of us that all have to begin to kind of like move up. And there'll be a lagging part. And until you solve for this lagging part, everything else is going to be limited. So recognize that and figure out. And I've talked about this too in the last couple of months, where, taking fun more seriously. That's what that means too, is to not just have it be this like passive, accidental, oh, I blew out. Do that, engineer it, and do it really, really well. So that's what I got. Thanks for your time. Have a great day.